Okay, welcome back. It is July 3 of 2015. We're going to take a look at Brentano again in book 3 of his empirical standpoint. We're going to take a look at the second moment. Now, he started in this book by giving us a detailed look at the first moment of existential judgment, but now he takes a look at analytical judgment a little closer and gives us a little bit more detail, not much, but he adds a little bit to the summary we had before. So we're just going to take a look at this second moment, which is analytic. He says that the first step is perceiving. The first analytical moment is going to take up that object of presentation as an inward objective mental phenomena of generalization. So we take up the internal externality, which is stored in mechanical memory. And next we proceed through noticing, which raises the generalization to signification. We look for the true image of signification that it does represent. This takes us to the important moment, the third moment of axiomatic expansion for Brentano. He says that after we have sign formations, after we've raised generalizations to sign formations, that we're going to get involved in an axiomatic expansion through analogy and comparison, and a true expansion of knowing through taking up the axioms that we will accrue as we continue through our epistemology. We will continually build a network of axioms of the true. And we introduce this axiomatic expansion because the self is now addressing the secondary object as thinking being. So this detailed analytical judgment is always enlisted. We analyze the extended identity of the signification and its distribution, its relational determination, and its and the quality and intensity of each individual sign that will make up the relational determination as a composite. He gives 5 basic analytical axioms. Intuition grasps the local determination of an object. The relative determinations are abbreviated under absolute categorical determinations. In other words, we will have subsystems, and these each presentation will reflect a difference in intensity, and all differences in determination are qualitative in their difference. It's always a difference in quality. He next moves on to proterosis, because we're going to be moving into structure, and this is where our motivational base of our prior moral and intellectual insight will be taken into consideration and will be coupled with that expansion of knowledge. And we will start examining the relationship between the significations. This is referential thinking. We're referring the individual significations to each other. So after the axiomatic expansion, we're ready to transition to forming a clear, what he calls a clear relational localization. So the relational model is called a localization, localizing each individual signification within its interrelatedness. The parts of the local extension are referenced to each other in this referential thinking. So in this way, the secondary object becomes the primary object for us. We do an axis flip, and we make secondary object the internal of the externality. We make it our primary object. It's our primary object of thinking. So we take the internally posited obliquo as the thing in itself. This is the true reality. And we take it as a continuum. It does have a temporal trajectory. And so we analytically take up the presentation as a whole continuity of temporal modes. So we end up perceiving this internalization as a two-dimensional sign model, but we do recognize that it possesses a three-dimensional character. And we are going to grant it the probability of universality because we are not going to merely perceive it as an individuated representation of ourselves. We're not going to posit that individuation. Instead, we're going to posit it as a universality of the probability of the true. We never really can achieve certainty, but we can posit it as a positing of the probability of the true. It's our best approximation of the true. It's our probability of the true from an eschatological point of view. So analytical judgment takes up the continuum of extension for positive significations. And so it gives us quite a bit of additional information here. It gives us a little bit better look at how we take those generalizations and move them into signification. But it gave us a better idea of how, in his opinion, we're always going to be building a group of axioms. We never avoid propositional truth. We will continue to build propositional truth as we work through any epistemology. Well, as we form these axiomatic propositional truths, they're going to become foundational for us, and we will be able to actually make them a transitional moment for every signification to pass through. There will actually be a moment of axiomatic expansion for Brentano. And then after axiomatic expansion, we start looking at structure by looking at that temporal trajectory of proterosis and coupling that with motivational base of our prior moral and intellectual insight. But looking at that succession of sensations, the temporal trajectory of these significations, we start seeing how they are interrelated to each other, how they form a structural model. And so we get into referential thinking, and then from referential thinking, we end up forming an internally posited continuum. And the continuum is going to pretty much appear two-dimensional, but we do realize that it is a three-dimensional model. But it is going to appear as a two-dimensional sign model. That's how we evolved this sign model. It's merely our way of viewing it, but we do also couple that with the knowing that it does have depth of 3 dimensions. And we give it that additional signification of universality. We are trying to form true image here, and that means we are trying to form true image sign model as an internal representation of externality, of the external situation, and its universal trajectory, where it's headed. And we posit our best approximation, our best probability of what that truth is. We don't know it with any certainty. We'll seek that certainty through recognition by positing that model and then allowing others to work it through their own conceptualizations. And then from the return we receive from others, we can start modifying our sign model and working toward the universality of the true. And of course, all of this is done for Brentano at the Da Kunta threshold of conversation and dialogue. And that's the dialogue at the level of psyche. That's psychognosy. That's the dialogue only at the level of psyche, not the level of intellectual gnosis. That's intellectual gnosis is your composition threshold. The Da Kunta threshold is the psyche threshold. It is very much motivationally based. You deal a lot with motivation. You deal a lot with signification at this level. So signification and motivation really dominate at the psyche threshold, or the Da Kunta threshold, or the threshold of dialogue for Brentano's act of psychognosy, cognition at the level of psyche. And so that takes us, it was just an additional 20 pages, but he packs so much information, and I had to pause so we could look at the additional data he gives us for the second moment. He didn't give us a lot of detailed information like he did the first moment, but we only took up just a few pages here. But I wanted to keep us caught up because he is a very detailed thinker, so that puts us up through a lot of detail in the second moment of analytical judgment, and we will return from here.